Ready?
I am, yes.
Here we go. Okay, I got to write down my time so I know where we're ending. First break. Okay. I'm sorry, it's hard for me because if this were like here, maybe it won't be as hard because I'm always like jotting down notes and I have to mention this. Intentional. I'm not in the moment all the time because I'm having to do 10 different things.
I know how that goes.
Hi, friends, and thanks for listening to The Fashionista Life, brought to you by True Fashionistas, where you can sell, shop, and look fabulous. I am your host, Jennifer Johnson, and today's guest is Sarah Mueller, and she is a certified conscious parenting coach from Dr. Shafali, who Oprah calls revolutionary and life-changing. She's going to be receiving her Certificate of Leadership Excellence from Harvard University this September, as well as her personal certificate in trauma and resilience from Florida State University. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
It is so exciting to have you because every time I hear from our listeners that, wow, that was great information. So I know that it's resonating with them and they love to hear from you. So kids are headed back to school or already back into school.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked in our last podcast about what we do leading up to them going back to school, what that landscape looks like, and being intentional with all of that. But you know what? No matter what, they're going to still have anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety over a lot of different things. So let's just chat about that. Where do you see all of that, the anxiety falling into kids going back to school, and what can we do to help them?
Yeah. So I think when we look at anxiety in general, we kind of want to reframe it. I talked in the last podcast about before we reframe it, we want to accept it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's normal. It's totally normal that our kids are feeling anxious and that they're going to have some concerns and some fears about something new. So we first, as the adult, as the parents, address our own anxiety. We
Right.
find out what our own fears are, so that we can help our child to address theirs. So, there's a couple different ways that I like to talk about that reframing of anxiety. If we start to feel anxious as children or as adults, a lot of things happen, right? Our body changes,
Mm-hmm.
our heart starts beating, our temperature rises, maybe our hands shake. It shows up a little bit differently for everyone, but there's some consistencies in the way it shows up in our body. And we can tell that we are anxious or scared about something. And if we just put that aside and we think about when we're really excited about something, when we're going to go to Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
or we just got a job promotion, or parents having sex, like the same kind of physical reaction happens in our bodies. Our heart rate increases,
Mm-hmm.
our breath shortens, we might get sweating. And so if we can notice that there is a shift in our body, and instead of being like, oh, this is anxiety, this is fear, this is bad, let's just allow it to be a messenger to what's going on. So, okay, I have some sort of fear,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to address it. I'm going to help my child address it because they're scared of something.
Mm-hmm.
We can also look at it as, because part of what happens with anxiety is we start to feel anxious, and then we're anxious about being anxious, and that increases our anxiety.
And anxiety is absolutely, there's just no base to it, right? Like there's no anxiety just comes on, or
yeah, it can come on for anyone for any different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
We could be triggered by something that reminds us of a past experience, or it could be a little fear and just that fear of the unknown. But then we start to feel it, and a lot of us are thinking, "Oh, this is bad. I shouldn't feel this way."
Right.
And then we start to have that anxiety about the anxiety. So my question here is, can we instead think about it as excitement? So sure, I'm scared of going back to school, but maybe this is my body telling me that this is important to me, that I want to make new friends, that I want to do well in school, that I want to find the group that I fit in with. And we can look at it as, okay, my body's telling me that this is important to me. Let me take the actions so that I can do my best. And instead of beating myself down that, oh, I'm anxious and I'm scared and there's something wrong with me.
Like from a negative to a positive spin on it.
Yes.
Change that outlook.
Yes, because the physical reactions in anxiety and in excitement really are very similar. And so, like, I know for as a public speaker,
Mm-hmm.
when I start to get nervous, instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, I'm going to fumble my words, I'm going to make a fool of myself, that will lead me down a bad hole, right? That I'm probably not going to be confident on stage if I'm thinking those thoughts. But if I think, oh no, okay, I can tell that, sure, I'm nervous, but this is, my body's preparing me because this is important to me. So you know what? I'm going to take a couple breaths and I'm going to do what I can to show up as my best. And so, teaching our children those tools on how to handle that stress or that fear when it shows up for them. Deep breaths are very calming for the nervous system that gets activated when we are anxious. So, we can tell our children to do that, but the best way that they learn is by us modeling that ourselves. So if I'm getting anxious and I'm with my boys, I'm going to say, you know what, that car that just cut in front of me is making me really anxious right now. I'm going to take a couple deep breaths to calm myself down.
Do you verbalize that to them?
Exactly.
So that they know, oh,
yes,
I know what's happening.
Yes. So exactly. So it helps me become more present, but it's really to teach them. So
I see that. Wow.
Yeah. Because if I could take deep breaths, but they don't necessarily know that I'm doing it. So speaking it out loud helps them to kind of gain their own tools to do that.
I love that because you're taking something that's going on right now and you're teaching in the moment because that, it's like hands-on learning.
Yes. And that's how our children learn. We talked in the previous podcast about our teens especially don't want us to be giving them a sermon or giving them advice even. But if we can model, that's one of the best way for our teens to be open to what we have to share them. And then I think it goes into, let's get underneath what they're really scared of. What's really behind that anxiety? I think I shared this before, but it's usually what I always think that it's something, but then with my son, it's something completely different that he's concerned about, like not having enough money for a snack or, and I think he's worried about not making friends, but it's because he doesn't think he has enough money to buy a snack after school, so.
And I've heard another one that was crazy. That was somebody not wanting to eat hot lunch. They always wanted to bring their cold lunch. Well, why? When we got to the root of the problem, it was, I didn't want to be last in line because I wanted to have a seat at a table. I didn't want to be left. Basically, I didn't want to be left behind. I didn't want to not be able to sit with my friends because I didn't get to the front of the line first.
Yeah.
It's not what you think.
Exactly. And because we have to try as best we can to put ourselves in our children's shoes. And the best way to do that is that empathy that we talked about before and really being conscious and asking questions and helping our children be able to express it to us. And then one of the simple tools for really any of the transitions to school year, or even if we're already in school, that is, I think, underutilized within parenting is the concept of role play. We can all of us, the way that we build confidence is by doing something.
Sure.
Whether it's writing or whether it's making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or making friends, confidence comes from the act of actually doing something and just kind of being messy at first. Practicing. And so the role play is a low stakes, safe place for our children to practice. Okay, let's say that there's no seat at the table that you want to sit at lunchtime and you're feeling left out. Well, what could we do instead? And you sort of brainstorm, like help your children come up with ideas. You can offer some, but again, we're empowering them so that when they become the teenager going off to college, they can think and create ideas for themselves. But then we can offer them the opportunity to role play and just say, hey, do you want to be yourself or do you want me to play the other kid? And let them do that. It just helps for them to feel more comfortable with how to address some of these situations that might be causing their fears.
They're putting it in their proverbial toolbox.
Their toolbox, yes.
Which is, you can't buy that stuff. You can only learn it.
Absolutely.
So I love that. All right. We are going to head to a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about anxiety of other things at school and what is happening in our world. With the kids headed back to school, you may have a little extra time on your hands to clean out your closet and maybe even theirs. Hey, maybe you even have time to redecorate your home. And if you're wondering what to do with all that stuff that you've accumulated, bring it all to True Fashionistas, where they will sell your unwanted items for you. They take away all the hassle by doing all the work, and all you have to do is collect your money. You can reach out to them online at truefashionistas.com. You can go into the store or check them out on Facebook or Instagram, and that's at truefashionistas.com. All right, friends, we are back with Sarah Mueller, and she's our guest today, and she is a certified conscious parenting coach. welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have a really interesting topic that we're chatting about today on the heels of kids back in school and anxiety.
Mhm.
Okay. So much is happening in our world right now. And excuse me, the kids have access to news,
Mhm.
right? So they hear it in the news, they hear it from friends, they hear it from the parents. We're talking about it. We're talking about it at home. They're scared, and they're scared not just about, am I going to have friends in school? They're scared about, am I safe in school?
Mhm.
How do we have these conversations with them, and how does that look like? And how do we get them to the point of feeling comfortable going back to school?
Yeah, that's such a great question and such an important topic right now. I think that I always err on the side, and I advise my clients to err on the side of being honest and with our children, no matter what age they are, really speaking straight. If we're hiding anything, our children can sense that at any age.
They can. I know that.
And so even with my youngest boy, just talking about the reality as best I can and just hoping that he understands it, but let's talk about sort of framing this in a way that can help our children. So first of all, we're honest, but we need to teach our children really a leadership lesson that Stephen Covey talks about in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about the circle of control and the circle of influence and the circle of concern. And so as a leader, as a human being, we can either operate in the circle of concern or the circle of influence. The circle of concern is everything that we think and that we worry about, but that we have no control over whatsoever. The circle of influence, on the other hand, are those things that we do have control over, those steps that we can take, the actions that we can do to set ourselves up for success, to be intentional, as we talked about in the last podcast. So as we're looking at safety in school, I think we have to help our children to understand their role and their circle of influence, and then the teacher and the administrators and the school district's circle of influence, right? The teachers and the administrators, the school district, their circle of influence is safety and the protocol that they've developed, and whatever that process is for a shooting or a hurricane or whatever it is, they have looked at every single one of those situations, and they know what the safest route is for our children. That's why they've developed that protocol. It's not ideal. We don't want our children to experience any of that, but they're the ones that have the job of having to focus on that. That's not my job. That is not our children's job. And we have to help them to trust that their teachers have it under control. And their job instead is to understand the protocol, to practice it when they practice it, and to make sure that they're comfortable with it. If they have any questions, go to their teacher, come to you, even your own safety in your home, like if there's a fire, do you know where you're going to meet? Does everyone know what to do? That we talked about before, just building confidence, just understanding or role playing that, as unfun as it is, it helps our children to feel safe because they know what to expect. And so your circle of influence is listening to what your teachers tell you. They are doing their best to keep you safe, and this is how you can focus in school. Your job is to come to school, to focus, to learn, to make friends. Their job is to do all of the planning to keep you safe.
And knowledge is power. So for the kids, if they know, okay, the teachers, the administrators, they have my back. They know what to do. I can, and I don't know, with the young child growing up and how as an adult we can go, okay, well, they've got it. I don't need to worry about that. And I'm sure it's probably not as easy in younger kids because they don't have, their brain isn't fully developed, right? But then you just walk them through it and
yeah. And when I talked about being honest, I'm not going to tell my very young child that children are dying and people are being, I'm not, so I don't mean like that kind of honesty, but I meant being forthright that sometimes things happen in school that aren't ideal and you need to listen to your teacher, and kind of sharing that information as they get older as necessary.
So what if and I'm going to harken this back to something that happened a long time ago, but a school goes on lockdown here, right? And that traumatizes a child. Nothing happened in their school, but it happened at the school next to them, but they got put on lockdown. How do you deal with after something has happened? How do you have those conversations and okay, where do we go from here so that they're not afraid to go back
Yeah.
after something does happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are, I don't know the exact resources that our
Mhm.
schools offer, but I know that they have guidance counselors. And when something like that happens, they often build more programs that can support the reaction from
Sure.
something like that in a nearby school. But we want to be able for our children to express their concerns. And so it goes back to similar to what I spoke about earlier. They're not bad, they're not wrong
Yeah.
for feeling this way. Let's allow them to share how they feel. We hear them, we repeat back to them what they're saying so that they feel heard and understood, whatever that looks like for them. And then having them get support
Sure.
from a counselor to walk them through dealing with that trauma, because it can impact our children in many different ways. It might have zero impact on one child, but it can greatly impact
Right.
the other, just depending on everything else that's going on in his or her life.
And it may not be immediate.
It may not be
You know?
immediate, no.
And that's the scary part is you may not feel that way today, but when you're what is that where you're like a trigger, something may just trigger it, and you feel that way.
And so that's why when we look at conscious parenting, we look at the behavior. Our children's behavior is not because they're ever being a bad or even if they're not getting good grades anymore. Whatever that behavior is, there's an unmet need. And so that could show up 6 months later, because the child might repress it at first and just not think about it, but it might show up 6 months later when they hear something on a movie or a TV show. And so let's understand, well, what's going on? Why is my son all of a sudden not focused? Why is he talking back to me? What's going on here? What's that unmet need?
Right.
And it might be related to that earlier trauma.
That's a great point. Anything else that we can do to ease their anxieties?
Yes. So I think, of course, our children are going to be exposed to the news, and it's unfortunate, all the school shootings and whatnot. But one of my biggest asks of all of my audiences, whether they're children but mostly adults, is to really limit the news. Yes, these tragedies are happening, and also we are in the safest times of our human beingness. Like there's less murder, there is less abduction, there is less. Think about even 100 years ago with the way that our country was. That we are in the safest of times. However, when you watch the news regularly, it doesn't look that way.
Of course not.
Right? The news is they get their attention by focusing on fear and anger, which of course these school shootings and things like that bring up, rightly so. But there are so many other amazing, wonderful things that are happening. And so really limiting our news exposure, limiting it around at our children, and letting our children know that, yes, you need to be smart, but we live in really safe times. Let's focus on what we can control, and let's stay positive and surround ourselves by that positivity, because that will just take away some of that anxiety that's unnecessary.
I love that. And parents consume your media on your time.
Yes.
Not in front of your children. And I personally, as a parent, have a hard time with that, because, you come home, you turn the TV on, it's on the news, you don't change the channel, and then you don't think your child is listening from the other room. But I swear, these children have hearing like theirs.
They do. Absolutely.
And so they hear it, and then the questions come out, or they don't come out until a week later. Mom, remember, I heard this on the news, or something will come up in their mind, and we're like, well, where did you hear that from? Well, it was on TV.
Absolutely.
So,
and it's outside of our circle of influence, going back to what we talked about. Like most 99% of what we hear about on the news is not anything that we have control over. So even as adults, it doesn't serve us.
Right.
Like very, very limited, but a lot of it isn't necessary for us either as adults.
Well, I have so enjoyed having you on our podcast today, because I think this is such pertinent information for our guests to hear headed back into school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any parting words that you have for our audience today?
Oh my goodness. Love those kids. They are amazing. And our job is to just allow them to shine as they are. We really need to step back and do as little as we can, and they will be amazing.
So, Sarah, if our audience would like to get a hold of you, how do they do so?
My website is joydiscovered.com. It's joy discovered with an ED at the end.com. And I've got blogs there, videos, free workbooks, lots of stuff. And my contact details are there.
Fabulous, fabulous. And thank you again for being on.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, friends, for tuning in to the Fashionista Life with Jennifer Johnson, brought to you by True Fashionistas. Make your day fabulous.